Hi, I'm Eli Harmon in Lviv, Ukraine, and I'm here with Kurt Doolittle of the Propertarian Institute. We're going to be talking about liberals, conservatives, and libertarians. And Kurt, you've made the argument that these three groups of people are actually different. Is that correct?
Yeah, I've made the argument they're different, but I thought it was funny because I think when in prep for the show, you were saying, you mean there's actually value to having progressives in society? Was that surprising to you somehow?
That was news to me.
Okay, so the easiest way to start out with this is that it's really obvious that progressives and libertarians and conservatives have moral specializations, or rather, conservatives don't have moral specializations. Libertarians have slightly narrower moral specializations, and progressives have very narrow moral specializations. And matter of fact, that conservatives can understand libertarians can mostly understand, and conservatives can understand progressives. Now, we know that we libertarians, we sort of get conservatives, right? They're a little silly, too much, but progressives are a little crazy to us, right? They're really out there. So in conservatives, of course, they see this they see everybody else as just making a mistake somewhere along the line.
And this is coming from Jonathan Haidt's work, correct?
We've had a lot of people in social science try to work on this particular problem, but I think what Haidt did, because he was able to use the internet and some surveys, and they worked very hard at it, they were able to come up with what those moral specializations are. And I don't know if it really behooves us to get into what they are, but normally the progressive one is they're almost exclusively concerned with harm care, and when their version of liberty is social liberty. In other words, the unconstrained vision, whereas libertarian view is economic liberty, which is the use of liberty to the uses of resources. And so, but conservatives don't see that. And libertarians, we just simply place a higher value on economic liberty than progressives do. And conservatives, they have the full suite because they're trying to preserve the tribe. And so you see conservatives are very concerned about disgust, right? What's disgusting, what's polluting, what's sacred, things that would violate not only the body politic, but the mind politic. And so, but we tend to think that these are learned behaviors, but that's because what's happened is over a very long period, we've created this mythos to justify majority rule, democracy, and we've tried to create this concept of equality, especially since the Enlightenment, which is something I feel like I'm trying to work hard to correct. And so since the Enlightenment, we have all this democracy, we're all equal, whatever. And whereas that wasn't how people thought about the world for most of history, and it turns out the people in history were right and we're not. And so what we have moral specializations by reproductive strategy. And the progressives tend to reflect the female reproductive strategy, which is to have your offspring, put your offspring on the burden of raising caring for your offspring on your tribe. Raise a village, it takes a village, and so you have the sort of female reproductive strategy. You have the typical sort of male protective strategy, and then you have producer reproductive strategy, which is guys like us who are libertarians. And so, but we're just a lot like, we can't all understand each other to some degree. We're just like, nurse ants and warrior ants and farmer ants. We specialize. We're compatible. Right? We're still compatible. We're similar enough to be compatible, but we're different enough to be able to specialize. And so what I've tried to show people is that the problem with majority rule is that majority rule is really good for selecting priorities among people with similar interests and similar abilities, which is what we have when you have a family, right? A whole lot of families. Right?
So, for example, shareholders in a corporation.
Yes.
Would be an example of people with similar interests?
Yes, and so you have a family as a bunch of shareholders in the family, right? And that's in a corporation, they're trying to produce profits, right? And in a family, you're trying to produce intergenerational transfer of, reproductions, intergenerational transfer of genes. So you're trying to reproduce. So that's a reproductive corporation versus an economically productive corporation, right? And we don't like to compare this because somehow business should be different from the sacredness of the family, but I mean, it's still just an organization where try to produce a common good, right? And so, when I say we're compatible, I mean that it's just like male and female reproductive strategies are compatible, but they aren't anywhere near identical. When you try to explain that to different parts of the moral spectrum, it's almost an alien. A conservative will say, well, of course, and a progressive will say that's not true. And it's because of moral blindness. We're all, because we need to believe these things in order to do them, we do. And so you find that, just like mothers, mothers of serial killers half the time don't believe their kids did it. The fathers of serial killers are like, hey, fry them, Mothers don't believe it. And you can't find, and so conservatives are extremely afraid of threats, right? And the progressives say, well, that's not a real threat. Well, that's not a threat. Well, it could be in the future, says the conservatives, and we want to quell this threat. So we have moral specializations. And the problem with democracy, and I'll get to your question in a second. The problem with democracy is that, when we were families and we had one family, one vote, you were voting on behalf of the family, and all that conflict that's happens between the fact that we're compatible but not identical was happening down inside the families. And you were just bringing that vote up to politics and working on common interests in politics. But the minute we broke the family up and you started having women voted again, now we have both reproductive interests let loose. So we used to have a House of Lords, a house of the King, the House of Lords, and the House of Commons. We didn't go make a House of Proletarians because we had the church. Right. So what we did is women went into it with their different reproductive strategies, their different strategy about the family, which is completely different than the male strategy of the family. And what's happened is that we're just we have no way of coming to resolution because there's no way under democracy and majority rule to conduct a compromise. It's just whoever wins. There's no compromise involved at all. So of course, the solution to that, which we've talked about, is creating exchanges between people with dissimilar interests in government, the same way we create exchanges in the market, and doing those contractually. Government doesn't work that way, and I hope to elucidate on that quite a bit more in the future. So you said compatibilism.
Compatibilism.
Did
yes.
I answer your compatibilism question already or not?
I think you're getting there with the exchanges.
Okay.
So we have different groups of people that have different strategies and different priorities. And if they have to make exchanges rather than trying to rule through attaining majority, then we can cooperate through trade without having to agree.
Yes, right. We can get a Nash equilibrium, right? Which is that we all get the best that's possible while still making each other happy. Right? And so just like in the market, we don't get the optimum, right? We get the best we can get. And in marriage, in monogamy, everybody doesn't get they get the best they can get. That's what a Nash equilibrium allows you to have, is everybody gets the best they can do by pairing off with a peer at about their status, right? And so it generates castes maybe that way, but that's what monogamy does. Well, in the market, what we do is we have people with completely different not reproductive but economic interests and strategies, and they're completely invisible to us because we're just communicating via prices, right? Prices and voluntary exchanges. The problem is the market's not capable of producing all goods. I mean, libertarians would like this to be true, but it's not. Because in the market, when you and I compete, he wins. If you get the deal, I still lose. And that provides me with incentives to act faster. But if people were to try to produce the commons the same way, no one will volunteer for the commons. The problem we have with the production of commons is you have to make it impossible for the cheat and steal. Like, you have to suppress it almost entirely before anybody will put the first nickel in. So that's why we need governments, is to say, well, this is a commons and nobody can privatize it, right? That's why we have it. We create a contract with one another. But the problem we have now is that we can't create a contract with one another because there's no means of obtaining an exchange in government. Now, a bunch of cunning public choice nonsense will try to come in and argue this with me. It'd be great to have some public choice people with us so that I could actually tear them apart a little bit. But the answer is there's no way to construct an exchange because they're trying to figure out what's the optimum. What's the optimum? What's the most efficient by reason and empiricism? Instead of taking advantage of all the information that exists in all those people and their preferences by trades, the same way we do in the market and prices. And so we've constructed a government that manufactures ignorance. It causes conflict. We did exactly the wrong thing. Instead of taking them to learning what we did in the market and destroying the one family, one vote, and bringing the market information into the construction of law, we actually did the opposite. We did the terrible thing, which is we said everybody's got an equal vote, even though they have unequal interests and they have unequal abilities, and there's no way to make use of the knowledge they have except by majority rule. So we've destroyed the information system through it. And so the solution, of course, is how do we construct in government the voluntary exchange system for the production of commons that we've constructed in the market using, the voluntary exchange. How do we do the same thing in both the government that we do in the market so that we can actually take advantage of progressive, libertarian, and conservatives, so we're constructing exchanges, not thefts, because that's what government ends up being, right? Majority rule is theft by majority rule, right?
Makes sense. Now you've described this as intertemporal division of labor.
Yeah. So one of the things about the market is it's really not good at long term, right? Mm-hmm. Right. But what's our reproductive cycle? I mean, it's
decades.
Yeah, I mean it's really long, and if you go to the Roman view of things, it's as long as the person who experienced something here still lives. So it's roughly 100 years, just less than 100 years. So if you were to say, well, the cognitive reproductive cycle, the cognitive cycle in government's 100 years, right? And that just never is changing, right? It's just a 100-year curve. It's moving forward, and so. Yeah, the intertemporal means between from here to here, right? Rather than intratemporal, which is nearby here across long periods of time. And so I always think of it as the progressives are trying to think short. They want to make sure, like mom, all the children are fed, everybody taken care of, everybody's happy, right? Then you have the libertarian is like, I'm glad everybody's happy, but we got a production cycle here we got to worry about. And it's hard to produce this stuff because for libertarians, we're really cognizant of the voluntary organization of production, right? We got to organize capital, organize laws, whatever, so that everybody does stuff voluntarily because then they can organize the production themselves, voluntarily, and they will all satisfy each other. And they'll actually work, which is the secret. And conservatives are like, if we let this happen, and then long term, the whole thing is going to fall apart. And so you have these little division of labor, just like we have division of labor in the market. Somebody pulls wires, somebody cuts it, somebody shines it, and somebody else makes a pin, and somebody else wraps paper on and boxes it, and we got a box of pins. And Adam Smith's sort of example of the pin factories, but. We have the same thing happening in intergenerational production of human beings. Our society is a production unit. We produce society just like we produce those pins through division of labor. And some of us worry about little stuff, some of us worry near stuff and children, and some of us worry about production, and some of us worry about the fact that the whole thing isn't going to fall apart. So I made this little list at your request. Can I tell you what's on my list?
Ahead.
Can I tell you my list?
Let's hear the list.
So there's 3 means of persuasion, right? Should I start out with this one? Yeah, 3 means of persuasion. So there's only 3 ways of coercing everybody. It turns out there's short-term, long-term, and medium. Short-term, medium-term, and long-term. So we have the progressive means, which we call gossip, right? Gossip is what progressives do, right? They talk, right? And they use alienation. They use rallying and shaming. Right?
And they're really good at this. They can launch a storm of tweets.
Yes, everything. And this is how females controlled alphas. Right? So this is what happened is this guy's over here causing a problem. The chicks get us all agitated. We go kill the guy, and then there's no more problem anymore. Right? So this is part of us. Right? We've evolved this way, and so progressives are just using you're still gossiping. Now libertarians, we think about everything as like change. You want to trade me, and and that's right, production cycle. We think about that's how we coerce people by saying, how do I create an incentive so the person does what they want to? Right? What do I have to give this person to do what I want? Right? And a conservative says, there's a wall here, and nobody's going to be on this wall. Sorry, that's a limit. The limit is here, and you guys can do whatever you want, but the limit's here. There's no limit. And so conservatives rely on force, or progressives rely on trade, and libertarians rely on trade, and progressives rely on gossip. And we're all pretty good at coercing each other over our timeframes. We tend to think about this in the context of the politics of majority rule instead of a division of labor. Right? Intertemporal production cycle of human beings. And then, and so conservatives work on long-term progression cycles of society. Libertarians work on medium-term production of goods and services, and progressives work on short-term, which is the production of comfort, happiness, and well-being as our little human beings are growing. So conservatives save; they think about saving, and libertarians think about investing and producing, and progressives think about consumption. And they do. And that's what the whole progressive idea is, right? They force us into consumption. We're burning the whole civilization down in order to consume at this point. And so I just try to break it down into the production cycle. So those were my notes that I wanted to get across to you. So what I try to say is that we actually need those moral perspectives in our division of labor. The problem is we can't let any of them go to an extreme. We can't let the conservatives go to an extreme, or we get Islam. We can't get libertarians to go to extreme, or we get libertinism. We can't get progressives go to extreme because we get socialism. And if we get socialism, we get dysgenic and we fall apart and we consume everything in sight, and there's nothing left. If we get conservatives, we get stagnation, and if we get libertarians, of course, my opinion is we're right? We're the right guys. We would do the right thing.
Special snowflakeism, atomism,
yes.
all those kind of.
I didn't know the snowflake joke, right? And that's from Fight Club.
Yes, I believe it is.
Everybody's a special snowflake.
You are not a beautiful and unique snowflake, I think is the line in the monologue. I don't remember the whole thing. Now, you've said that conservatives treat norms as capital.
Yes.
What does that mean?
Well, it's hard to train people to behave a certain way. We're super predators, right? And so the conservatives are extreme. Like I said, it's a very progressives
have a very pessimistic view of
humanity because they see the accumulation of negative behaviors just the way you and I would see the accumulation of rust. Mm-hmm. Right? In a mechanical street, they don't like it. It really bothers them. And so they're always trying to make sure the machine keeps working long term. Right? And it's like, and the great thing is if you go to conservatives and you ask them what nobody can explain why they feel what they do. That's why people can't explain their moral intuitions. They'll go out and justify them all day long. But the truth is that the words we use, when we talk to each other, we're just negotiating with other people on behalf of our genes. That's all we're doing. Our genes are, we know that because your genetic, we can tell you your genetic strategy from your moral values.
So we're just reproductive tracks who can rationalize our behavior.
Yeah, it's negotiation. I'm trying to go down. We're a street, it's a division of labor, and we've got this language thing, and we justify, we try to position all this stuff so that we can keep this organism working, just the way ants send signals to each other. Right? And so I always say, we spend all this time trying to coerce each other. We're never going to convince anybody to do anything, right? We can't because it'd be actually in our genetic disinterest to do that. The only thing we can do is create institutions that allow us to take advantage of our specializations. Now, some people put in really bad institutions, and some people put in really good institutions. Westerners put in some pretty good institutions. Now, I might go down and say, well, somebody else did this better or whatever. But, the fact that we used heroism, truth-telling, the jury system, and the commons, and the fact that it adapts faster was pretty smart for a poor, small minority that had to use very specialized fighting tactics to keep much wealthier people closer to the center of the Bronze Age at bay. And we did a great job of it. Go ask the Turks when it came up against us, right? I mean, we're really, really good at it. So we have to understand what our strategy is. It isn't like this accidental thing that it's not like this great purposeful plan. We evolved it by trial and error over time, and it turns out to have been a very, very good one. And the only way to measure that's empirically, not by reason, not by just experience. We just measured empirically. Empirically, this kind of civilization has to. Empirically, it did evolve faster, and operationally, we can explain why it evolved faster because the rate of work it's possible for us to calculate and adapt is faster than other civilizations are able to. The rate other civilizations are able to recalculate and adapt. That's why Hayek said, "You Americans, if you don't like something, you'll just change the whole place in 6 months." It's a great quote if you see that. You see it.
Sounds like chaos.
Huh?
Sounds like chaos.
It's evolution, man. Somebody evolves faster. That's our thing.
So what's the problem with libertinism?
Yeah, so, I'm working really hard to distinguish between libertarianism, which is aristocratic liberty, and libertinism, which is Rothbardianism. And when I say libertinism, what I mean is that we can create wealth independent of the consequences to norms. Right, and so when I say libertinism, I'm trying to make the point that that the purpose of our existence is the reproductive cycle. It's not just to fall into the progressive error of consumption and production, right? And so our problem is, from our standpoint, I'd create companies all day long and generate new. If I had enough money, enough time, I'd just keep doing it for the sheer joy of doing it. Right? And a lot of libertarians, we do the same thing. I'd like to just experience more of life, try more things. We're very experimental people. And so the problem is that, we feel this way for a reason, because it's our function in society to worry about this stuff, because the conservatives are going to worry that the guys in the tribe next door is going to go kill us. We're going to actually go over there, start talking to them, say, what can I give you? We have to do our job. But our job it's not an end in itself. The end in itself of liberty is to persist the group. And so whatever group is better at producing liberty can produce a wealthier group of smaller numbers than can be produced by a poorer group of larger numbers. And so, I always say the libertarians are important because we're the people that are dragging humanity kicking and screaming out of constancy, because they all desire it, right? The progressives desire to reproduce everything possible, have as many as possible, consume everything possible. Conservatives want to, make it stable so they can protect it, and we're always trying to create disruption, right? And so, but disruption has an end, and so the end is in the Western civilization. The end is the normative is the reproductive cycle that suits the normative commons for people who are wealthy and breed in small numbers. So can I say something?
Sure.
I wanted to really thank you for coming to Lviv. We're trying to build this up here, and I think the world of you, which and I think you're very funny and very smart and very talented. But it was a real big deal for you to come here, and I really appreciate coming to see us.
It's been my pleasure. I've had a great time.
Okay. So can I close, or you want to close?
Yeah, go ahead and close.
So this is Kurt Doolittle and C.L.I. Harmon, and we're the Propertarian Institute, and thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.